Good afternoon and welcome. In honor of Pennsylvania Healthy Lands Week, today we are going to talk about one of my favorite things, that is Pennsylvania's state parks and forests. There's 124 state parks and 2.2 million acres of state forests in our Commonwealth, and there's so much to enjoy about all of those wonderful spaces. I am Amy Hill. I'm going to be your host of the program today. And I am speaking today with Marci Mowery, who is the president of the Pennsylvania Parks and Forests Foundation. So welcome, Marci.
Thanks, Amy. Happy to be here.
So what is the Pennsylvania Parks and Forests Foundation? What are you all about?
Great question. First of all, this is also my favorite topic of conversation, talking about our state parks and state forests. And the Pennsylvania Parks and Forests Foundation, we are actually celebrating our 25th anniversary this weekend on October 6th. We were incorporated in the state of Pennsylvania as a way of users of our state parks and state forests to engage with these places in other ways, as a way for them to give back to these places that help to improve their physical, mental, and emotional health, as well as these places that are economic engines in the community. And that means we do a number of different things. We serve as a fundraising arm for projects in parks and forests. We're the nonprofit partner for the state parks and state forests. We advocate on behalf of parks and forests, both in terms of funding through the budget for the state, as well as for any pieces of legislation that might adversely impact our parks and forests or could benefit our parks and forests. And we engage people in volunteerism. And that's a big part of what we do. We have 47, I think, now friends groups. We just added 2 more when they're in the process of adding another. But these friends groups are volunteers that are organized at parks and forests all across the Commonwealth. And they're doing a lot of interesting projects and programs, and they serve as a bridge between the park and forest and the local community.
That's very exciting. So how do you go about becoming a friend of a state park or a state forest?
So our background helper, Pam, is showing us the map of where all the friends groups are located across the Commonwealth. And there are friends groups that function under the nonprofit umbrella of the foundation. And there are some independent friends groups as well. And I don't want to not mention them because they're also doing very good work in their park where they're located. They're just not under our umbrella. But, you know, a group that's interested in forming, typically it's either driven by a park manager or a district forester or a group of volunteers that say, we want to be more organized in what we're doing. We want to have a formal relationship with the park. And so we bring people together and we have a conversation because it has to be mutually beneficial. We always say that, you know, what a friends group is doing. There's no 2 friends group that are exactly alike. We're not going out there with a cookie cutter because it's really based on the needs of the park or the forest and the skill sets and the desires of the volunteers. But being a member of a friends group is only one way that you can get involved. We also have volunteer days. We have we're working on some other programs where individuals can participate independently and on their own time schedule. We have a Stewards of Penn's Woods program because volunteering is very, very important for the future of our parks and forests. We didn't form to replace staff within state parks and forests. Our volunteers and the volunteering that we do works in conjunction with park or forest staff, often working shoulder to shoulder with them. So we love bringing in corporate volunteers. We love bringing in individual volunteers. And sometimes that volunteerism is intellectual, you know, sharing your knowledge base with us to help us solve problems or think through things.
Yeah, that sounds like a terrific example of public-private partnership, that it's our communities are where these parks are located. And so as people who love those parks can do more than just be visitors from time to time. So what are some examples of the different kinds of volunteer activities that people can get involved with? Again, and I'm sure it's very different depending on which friends group you're involved in, but what are some examples?
We have a lot of volunteers that are doing trail work. We have about 11,000 miles of trails, and That takes a lot of work. You think about this constant rain that we've been having, that's bringing trees down, bringing tree limbs down. It's also encouraging vegetation to grow, which is nice, but it can crowd a trail. So volunteers could be, out there maintaining the trail so that they don't become overgrown. Or we have trained sawyers who go out and remove dead and that trees that have fallen. Here's somebody doing some trail work here. Looks like they're building steps. So there's a lot of different opportunities when it comes to trail work. We have groups that host events. An example would be Fall Furnace Fest is coming up at Pine Grove Furnace. That's run by the Friends Group. There's the Apple Harvest Festival at Little Buffalo. There is the Cider Fest at Prince Gallitzin. These are done in partnership with the Friends Group and the state park. So, event organizing is something that people can do. We have volunteers that interpret history. We have volunteers that help with, help the educator with programs. And it's not just about that volunteerism. Sometimes our friends groups are raising money for projects within a park. They might be putting in a playground, replacing a bridge on a trail that has fallen down or needs to be replaced, or creating a loop trail. This is a great picture that Pam is showing now. This is at Pine Grove Furnace. The friends there piloted these clear panels that if you line up the panel with the landscape, it interprets the landscape during the heyday of the furnace. So it gives you an idea of what it would have been like to be there when Pine Grove Furnace was an active iron furnace. And the gentleman standing to the left, our left, as we look at him, there we go, thank you. He is a volunteer. He's actually the chair of the Friends Group, and he does a living history interpretation of Pine Grove. And actually we caught his living history interpretation on camera, and you can find him on our YouTube channel. If you're planning to go to Pine Grove and you want a little bit of history before you go, you can watch the whole thing in its entirety, or you can do it by segments. But it was a very active, thriving iron furnace, and there's remnants of that there today. So a lot of different things. Again, the volunteerism is driven by your skill sets, the time that you have available, and needs within a park or a forest.
Yeah. Sounds like a wonderful way to supplement the foundation of the park that's there, that's supported by, the Commonwealth, and our tax dollars are hard at work, but the Friends can really polish it and add to it and supplement. And that's fantastic. As someone who really enjoys state parks, I appreciate so much the work that people are doing to really enhance that experience. I think that's fantastic. And you mentioned the special events, and I think that's an important tie-in to Pennsylvania Healthy Lands Week, that we have all kinds of events going on all across the Commonwealth. Many of them are hosted by Friends of state parks and forests, including that Cider Festival, and a few of the others that you mentioned are happening this week. If you haven't seen it yet, go to pahealthylandsweek.org, as you see on the screen there. There's a list of events everywhere. Some of them involve volunteering, like the trail maintenance and the invasive species removal, and some of the other kind of roll your sleeves up kind of work. Some of them are educational. There's all kinds of ways to go and learn about the history, to learn about the natural resources, and all that has to offer. And others are really just recreational. There's some hikes that are being sponsored, some bird watching events, and some other wonderful things going on. So whether it's hosted by a Friends group or some other group, there's all kinds of opportunities to get out there and show your care this week. So check it out, pahealthylandsweek.org. But I want to get back to the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation and your mission, and some of the things that you provide. What kind of resources do you provide to people who care about their parks?
Well, before I answer that question, I just want to comment on the variety of activities within the Healthy Lands Week calendar. And I think it's really important that, as we look at that calendar, it's not just volunteerism, it's also about connecting to place, because there's a continuum in volunteerism. And if you don't care about something, or if you don't know a place, you might not be willing to give of your time, because our time is so precious. And I love the variety, like hike the AT out for ice cream. Yeah, composting. I saw one was a autumn olive and culinary, a different approach to talking about invasive species, and the museums that are involved, because the history and the natural world intersect in so many ways. In fact, one of the resources we have on our website is a list of museums that are near state parks, and forests, so that if you're out visiting one, and I was just camping for a week, and we went to the Piper Aviation Museum, and we went to the Thomas Tabor Museum, because it was raining every day, and we'd get out and hike, but we're like, okay, let's go enjoy some of the other things that are here near Heiner Run State Park. So it gets me excited to look at all the variety of ways that people can get involved in the outdoors.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what our mission is. Our mission is to inspire stewardship. And we do that through educating people, doing outreach, engaging people in volunteerism, and also through fundraising for projects and training for our volunteers. But we offer a lot of resources on our website to connect people to those spaces. So at paparksandforests.org, if you go to the About Us publications page, which Pam is so kindly showing us, you can see that there are not just our newsletters, there's information about our state park passport, but there's a lot of different fact sheets. There are handouts, like we put together a checklist of the PA wild and natural areas that you can download, and with a little bit of background on them. The museums piece that I mentioned, we've been producing these fact sheets that's sort of like the best kept secret of the space. We asked, the friends group or the educator or the manager, like, what's your favorite short hike? If you only had, a couple hours here, what would you recommend? Where would you go to eat after you leave here? So those are sort of like insider scoops. We try to translate our information as well, so it's available in both English and Spanish. And, we hope to expand to other languages, because one of our goals is to create a place and an experience for everyone in the outdoors. So we're very interested in make sure that we have educational materials in multiple languages, that we're providing access for all abilities, and that we're helping people develop skills that they need or would desire to participate in activities where maybe they haven't participated before. So, there's a lot of different things up there. We've got information on Lyme disease. We have information on wildlife watching, building a campfire, extinguishing your campfire. Because as I said, I was campground hosting, and people left burning campfires. Please, please, please don't do that. That's my public service announcement.
Yeah, that's a really, and I think, one of the things that's most remarkable about Pennsylvania's state parks and forests is how accessible they are. Everybody lives close by to something, and they're, you don't need to schedule anything. You don't need a ticket necessarily, unless you want to go camping, of course, but you can go and just find a parking lot and jump on a trail or visit the lake, or there's so many things that you could do at all of these different state parks. And learning how to enjoy the outdoors respectfully, I think, is something that everybody should know, because that is partly how we preserve it and make it nice for everybody to visit.
Yeah, and and you bring up a really good point, Amy, and we're one of only a handful of states that have no admission fees, no parking fees, and that's by design. Maurice Goddard is considered to be the father of Pennsylvania's park system. And he used to say that we don't put parking meters in mall parking lots because we want people to go to the mall. Well, not charging people an entrance fee or an admission fee or a parking fee allows people to enjoy it, their state parks and state forests. And there's not an economic barrier. So if you can get there, you can enjoy it. And I've been in states where that's not the case, where we wanted to stop and walk our dog for half an hour, and it was going to cost us $16. So we pressed on. Or, if somebody's bringing a picnic lunch, they're only going to be there, they're traveling. Like when I'm on Route 80, I always stop at SB Elliott State Park to stretch my legs, have a little lunch. If I had to pay $16, $20 to get in to do that, would I do it? Probably not. So it really encourages people to get out and get moving. And we know that when people spend time in the outdoors, they tend to move more often, that their stress level diminishes, and that overall it's healthy for them in so many ways. So I think that's a really important aspect of our park and forest system. You mentioned about taking care of it. That's part of what we try to message on is, principles of leave no trace, of, making sure when you go, you're prepared, about where you're going. If you arrive at a trailhead and it's too crowded, maybe finding another trail, not parking on the roots of a tree or making your own parking space in the grass, particularly on days like this, where you would just create ruts because it's been raining for 11 days now. Making sure that you pack out your litter. A lot of our places, day use areas are pack in and pack out. So, be prepared, have some trash bags with you so that when you go, you can take your picnic lunch with you, or you can be prepared to put it in the trash receptacle that's there. But there are a lot of things that we can do on a day-to-day basis without being a volunteer per se, that can be good stewards of all lands, not just our state parks and state forests, but our community parks, conservancy lands, any place that we visit, even in our own neighborhoods, our own backyards, because all of that runs downstream and ends up in our waterways.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, talking about state parks and, the fact that they don't have those fees really brings up this idea of equity, that everybody, no matter what their situation is, can access these state parks. But I think it also goes to show, by thinking about our parks and our environment, is also a question of equity, because we're all in this together. And so taking care to little things like throwing away your trash and picking up litter, but thinking broadly about how your impact might affect everyone around you, I think really is a responsibility that each and every one of us has, for our own good, but also for our neighbors and for our future. So I think it's really important lessons there to learn. So I wanted to talk a little bit more. You mentioned that this is the 25th anniversary of the Pennsylvania Parks and Forests Foundation. That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What are some of the major accomplishments that you have, and maybe some thoughts about, what the next 25 years might look like?
Oh, very good question. We just put together a list of some of our big accomplishments. I think that, the work that we have done of building the volunteer base, the Friends groups, is one of our big accomplishments. When we were originally formed, that was just a kernel of an idea, and it has grown to the 47 plus groups. And we've had some groups that were with us that moved on to independent groups, and we've had other groups that were established for a purpose and felt that they've met their goals and have stepped back. So it's a changing number. I think that another really important piece of what we have done and continue to do is making our parks and forests more inclusive. We've done a lot of work with placing ADA canoe and kayak launches. Next week, we're going to be unveiling our first truly inclusive playground. We've worked with the PA Wilds to place color correcting viewfinders up in the PA Wilds. So we continue to look at ways that we make our parks, inclusive and accessible to many people. We've become, there is our 25-year anniversary stream. We have done some education. We put together in 2018 a report that related to the needs in our state parks and state forests for infrastructure funding. And we've spent a lot of time educating decision makers, the media, local businesses on what these needs are, because if we are not investing in our state parks and state forests, who have a huge economic impact in their local areas, that economic impact will dwindle. That access to the outdoors for people will disappear. All of the other related values that these open spaces bring would disappear. So we continue to educate and try to make sure that there's enough funding to address critical needs in our parks and forests, as well as to increase the staffing in state parks and state forests, because we need more staff. We have more visitors. We have more odd weather events that adversely impact these lands, and we need the staffing to help with that. Trying to think of what some of the other things are. There are quite a few, and here's just this was a year in review, just on any given year, the number of trees that are planted, benches that are put into place, the miles of trails that are maintained, bridges that are put in, historic buildings that are preserved, the hours of volunteerism that occurs, the amount of money that is raised and reinvested into projects and programs. So this was 2023, 282 service projects. The value of volunteerism last year was over $1.1 million.
Amazing.
So
amazing. Really, really amazing work that you do. And I think that, it's fitting that we're talking about this during Pennsylvania Healthy Lands Week. You are spearheading stewardship year-round with the work that you're doing for the state parks and the state forests. So, maybe a lesson out of all of this is, Healthy Lands Week, we're putting some special attention, shining a spotlight maybe on this. But how does this play a role, Healthy Lands Week, but also your work in sustainability?
I think that the struggling here. I think the importance of Healthy Lands Week is it's raising awareness. It's raising awareness about the vast network of opportunities that are here in Pennsylvania, from state parks and forests to community parks to conservancy-owned lands to the museums and historic sites, and that all of these places, you can benefit them by visiting them, by being a good visitor when you are there, and to think about, if you have spare time, how you might assist them. And volunteerism isn't just about the place. There's been a lot of studies, and I don't know if Pam can quickly bring it up, but there's been research showing that when you volunteer, it decreases loneliness. It helps to build your education. It connects you to people that have similar interests. It can make you healthier. So there's a lot of personal benefits to volunteering and I think loneliness is one of those, you read more and more about loneliness and this disconnect in this digital age where we're all connected to our phones and not so much people. When you volunteer, you meet other people and you can, build relationships. You might get to know a place a little bit better. You might learn something new or be able to contribute your knowledge to something more powerful than yourself. So I think Healthy Lands Week is critical for just shining that spotlight on all these opportunities to maybe inspire people throughout the year to visit these places, to think about how they can become more involved if they're able to. But, maybe that involvement is a contribution. Maybe that involvement is something that they can do from their house. Maybe that involvement is different. But also the visiting these places and learning about them and telling other people about them. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do as a community. I know, Amy, that you're a volunteer. I myself am a volunteer. There it is. What does volunteering do for me? That's on our website. My husband and I, we're volunteer campground hosts. We maintain a section of the Appalachian Trail. We maintain islands on the Susquehanna River. And partly we do that because we enjoy the people that we're doing it with. We enjoy when we're hosting, meeting all the people that are enthusiastic about being in a campground.
Yeah. Well, that is true. I am a volunteer. I also help with maintenance on the Appalachian Trail. Those of us in central Pennsylvania know it goes right through our backyard. But I've also helped with a number of other organizations. For me, the benefit is all of the things that you just said and what was listed on that graphic that Pam shared. But really, I think I appreciate having access to these beautiful places. And I don't want to take for granted that the trail is going to be well marked and that the parking lots are going to be, safe and accessible, and that, that there are going to be ways for me to really learn and grow and appreciate the site, the points of interest, and all of that. And those things don't just happen. It takes commitment. It takes people caring about it. And as you know, trails disappear if you do nothing.
Yes, they
And that's
do.
the kind of why we appreciate the natural landscape, but it constantly grows and is constantly in need of maintenance. And that is, I think, part of that commitment to making things accessible is somebody gets out there and does those important things. So uh, really, I think I appreciate so much the work that you do with the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation. Um, Anything else you want to share with our group?
Um, yeah, something popped into my head as you were talking, and that is we have an online book discussion group. And at the end of September, and it was one of the activities on the Healthy Lands Week calendars, we discussed Silas Chamberlain's On the Trail, that looked at the history of trails, not just in Pennsylvania, but across the United States. And, one of the points that really stood out to me is the trail system was developed by volunteers. And it really was, people engaging in hiking in a different way than they do now. But as trails became more the project of a state agency or a federal agency, some of that volunteerism dropped off. So when we're hiking, we'll just talk about trails. When we're hiking on a trail, we might not realize all the energy that goes into maintaining it, as you were saying, to keep that open. And there are a lot of hands involved constantly in the background, keeping our trails open, doing a lot of other things that make these places that we enjoy accessible to us, there for us, open to us. And I think even if we don't volunteer, if we remember that there are volunteers probably behind places that we're enjoying, and if you see them, acknowledge them and thank them. That's a real plus, because those volunteers are out there on their own time, sometimes spending their own money to make sure you have a positive experience.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many ways that you can volunteer and you can support these things. Um, Before we wrap things up here, I know there are people watching on our various social media channels. Are there any questions out there that we could get to before we wrap up?
Feel free to put them in the comment box. And if the question is, what is my favorite state park? They're all great, as are all of the state forests. They all offer something just a little bit different. And I recommend you experiencing each and every one of them for yourself and finding out what fits you best.
Yeah, I appreciate that too. And I may have to get myself one of those checklists or the passports so I could keep track of those that I've been to. I like to go back to places that I enjoy in different seasons, because
Yes.
that's something I really enjoy as well, is that it's not just for summer. There's so many wonderful things that we can enjoy. So with that, I'd like to say thank you, Marci, for sharing and enlightening us a little bit about the work that you do at the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation. Remind everybody that there are still many, many events planned for the rest of this Pennsylvania Healthy Lands Week. It runs through Sunday. And I encourage you to visit our website online and find something near you. And thank you so much for paying attention to Pennsylvania Healthy Lands Week. So get out there and show you care.
So Amy, quick question. If somebody goes to an event and they are on social media, how can they tag Healthy Lands Week?
Oh, yes. Well, certainly hashtag PA Healthy Lands Week. Kind of all one word is a good way to do that. I encourage you to tag our social media, we're putting a lot of content out there, Facebook, Instagram, and such. And then share it and, tell everybody that you are out there, and talk about how proud you are to be a good steward of Pennsylvania's healthy lands. Spread the word. Certainly, the history of conservation was a viral movement, right? People talked to each other. They invited others to come out and see what was going on. So we have tools that make it quick and easy to do that today. But gathering people together and sharing what you love and working together to preserve it and protect it is something that is very much a modern cause, and we should still do it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Hope to see you on the trail or in the park or at an event.